Can you imagine suffering from severe migraine headaches and you go to some healing ministry to be prayed for, but some kid walks up to you and blows a shofar right in your ear? Or how would you feel if you were in serious pain and you went to get prayer and a bunch of squirrely little boys came in to pray for you and they started to dance around making all kinds of ninja moves and throwing candy at your whole body? What would you think? Well, those are just some of the stories you're going to hear in this episode as I introduce you to a good friend of mine, Barbie Hunt, who trains teams of kids to pray for the sick in the Healing Rooms Ministry of Madisonville, Kentucky. If you're not familiar with the Healing Rooms that were founded by Cal Pierce, it's a worldwide ministry where average lay people like you and I are trained how to pray for the sick and to heal the sick. And Barbie's been doing this with kids now for over 11 years. And under the endorsement of Cal Pierce and the Healing Rooms Board of Directors, she now has Healing Room kids praying for the sick all over the world. This is just one fantastic way to equip the little saints for the work of the ministry. They're not soldiers in waiting. Our kids are supposed to be soldiers in training right now, not 10 years from now when they're teenagers. Now, if this sounds exciting to you, type below, "Let the children come" in the comments. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to this channel so every time I upload a new video like this about kids or kids ministry, you'll get notified. Once a year, Barbie and her leaders offer a 10-week training course for kids ages 4 to 12 who want to be a part of their healing teams. Kids are taught to hear God's voice, to pray for the sick, recognize the presence of the Holy Spirit, and speak life to people. Best of all, they encounter God and build personal relationships with Jesus. They take kids as young as 4 and 5 years old, but those ages do need to be accompanied by a parent or a grandparent. Now, you've got to hear this testimony. It's going to rock your world.
We had a lady come in one day. She was dressed to the nines. She was a drug rep and had all this cute little suit on and high heels. And she's from out of town. She saw our sign that we were open. And on our sign, it does not say that it's kids because, as a matter of fact, it doesn't matter. Our healing room was open and they're ready to pray. So she came in and said she wanted prayer, that she was in a great deal of pain. And she was from out of town and saw our sign and came in and signed up. And the leader said, "Well, this is a kids' day and we have kids praying for you. Is that okay?" And she said, "Oh, that's different. I've never had a kid pray for me." "Sure, that's okay." So that day had been, we have a lot of worship. We have a great time an hour before we open for kids to come, get a snack, have a little teaching, worship God, soak. And we had some really wild boys that day. It was school year and they were just, my term for that is squirrely. You just don't know what they're going to do. But they had been worshiping to these wild songs that they had picked out and dancing around the room and doing all these ninja moves. And so I picked 3 boys to pray for this lady. And well, really, I give one, I choose a leader and give them a clipboard. Whoever has a clipboard's in charge. And he picked 2 of his buddies. So here they go in to pray for this lady, and they sit down and ask her what's going on, and she tells them she has fibromyalgia. She is in pain from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet. She's had it for quite a while. She has a lot of emotional things going on in her life, and she starts telling these 3 boys, it's always astounding to me what people tell kids, but she told them a lot about her life. And they're sitting there trying to stay in their seat, trying to be serious. And one of them said, "Well, we've been thinking about praying for someone who has pain where we can't really touch your whole body. So we have these fireballs and we have these mint candies in the room that we started putting in the room because, of course, we've got kids and we don't want them choking on candy. So we have these round mints that kind of melt in your mouth. And so we had a bowl of those, and they had been stuffing their pockets with this candy while she's talking. And they said, we've got fireballs, and we've got these ninja moves. We really feel like if we throw these fireballs at you, God just wants to heal your whole body. And we're going to throw fireballs, and wherever the fire is going to hit you, God is going to heal you. Is that okay with you? And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Wow. Whoa.
That was a brand new one for me. And I looked at the lady, and she's like, oh, that sounds great. We're like,
Wow.
okay, go for it. Well, here these three little wild boys start dancing around the room, making all the ninja sounds, throwing candy at her. And one of them said, you might want to close your eyes. We don't want to hurt your eyes. I mean, they're throwing candy at her whole body. One went down her dress. They thought that was hilarious. She thought it was funny. She started laughing. Laughing is healing. She started laughing. And then finally, I'm like, I mean, they're having so much fun. Finally, I'm like, I might need to ask her how she's doing. So they finally stopped and said, so how do you feel? Because they had already done the diagnostic question. Pain was at an 8. Most of her body was pain at an 8. So she was in a lot of pain. She said, well, all the pain has left my body except right here in the back where this chair is. So let me just lean forward. And you all throw some fireballs on my back. So they did, went through the whole ninja thing again. She walked out completely pain-free.
You know what I love about working with kids is they have no filter. They have no inhibitions, and they have the Holy Ghost inspiration that we grown-ups would too often just say, oh, they just have an overactive imagination. And sadly, if we adults don't watch it, we'll just shut these kids down and tell them to behave themselves. Most adults would just think they were goofing off and playing around. But no siree, they were hearing the voice of God and seeing in the Spirit how they were supposed to be praying for those people. Here's another crazy one. Little girls using wooden swords to shoot fireballs at a planter's wart. You gotta see this.
I have these little wooden swords that a friend made because the kids love to, we dress up, we go into this whole thing about being king's kids, about being royalty. Therefore, we have authority because we're sons and daughters of a king. And so often the kids will come in to pray for somebody with their crowns and their robes and their swords and their scepters. And so we have these little wooden swords. So we had this lady come for prayer, and she had I think it's called a planter's wart on the bottom of her foot. Really, really bad. It was big. It was very inflamed, very, very painful. The doctor said you have to have it cut out. It's surgery to have this thing removed. It was
I had them removed. I know what that's all about.
Okay, so you know what it is, really bad. And she was in a lot of pain. She was limping. And so that was the day that the girls had decided that the swords were also machine guns. And this had come about maybe within the year of the first time the boys did the fireballs. After that, fireballs were part of our arsenal. And often they would go in the room and tell somebody, we're going to throw fireballs at you, and you're going to feel the fire of God, and it's going to heal you. And is that okay? So the girls had picked up on that, and now they're thinking, we can shoot fire from these machine guns and heal. And so we're going to use the swords like machine guns. So they were little, if you kind of think of Leia in Star Wars, they were little Leias running around with their robes on and shooting fire out of their swords. So they tell the lady, we want to see your foot. Of course, they always want to look at boo-boos and, really check it out. So the lady took her shoe and sock off and showed them. They're like, oh my gosh, that's really bad. And there's like, okay, why don't you put your foot up on this chair? And they moved a chair in front of her foot. So her foot was up on the back of a chair. And so they said, just sit here. We're going to shoot fire at your foot, and God is going to start healing your foot from the inside out. And so they had already done a diagnostic. She was in a lot of pain. It was like an 8 or more. really more when she walked. So, and she had been up all night because she couldn't sleep, and was now decided it's get prayer and get healed or get surgery. So they started shooting at her foot, and this woman is a pastor of a Pentecostal church. So she experienced a radical presence of God. She's about to fall off of her chair. She is so getting, we call wrecked. There's no good word for it. Just feeling the presence of God, the power of God come over her, laughing and crying while these girls are shooting at her foot. They never touched her. They're running around doing the little Leia moves and shooting and making all the noises. And finally they stop and say, okay, tell me, your redness in your foot is gone. Is the pain gone? And literally the angry part of her foot around this place was gone. It was starting, the swelling was going down. She said, I have no pain. She got up, walked around, normal, no pain. She called me the next day to say, I woke up this morning and in my bed, one of the things the girls had said was, this thing is healing from the inside out and it's just going to fall off. She said the next morning in my bed was this plantar's wart that had fallen off, and there's no sign on her foot at all that it had even been there.
Do your kids know how to heal the sick? Okay, now wait just a minute. Don't get on your religious high horse because I use the term kids healing the sick. Yes, of course, it's Jesus who is doing the healing. We have no power outside of him. We know that. But go read the Gospels for yourself and tell me where Jesus even one time told the disciples to go out and pray for the sick. You can't find it. He told them to go out and heal the sick. So figure that one out in your little box of theology. I know, right? What would you do if you suffered from horrible migraine headaches and kids started blowing shofars right in your ears? You gotta listen to this testimony.
One of my favorite, and this one is in our manual. It has gone around the world. It's been told at Bethel. It's been told everywhere, but it is our story. We do love to tell it. This lady came in one day. She had had a migraine for a week. She had taken the 3 or 4 days of prescribed pills. That had not worked. She'd been to the doctor. She had had a shot, and that did not work. And she drove herself to the healing room, and she knew it was the kids' day. She was on our team. And she was in bad shape. She could barely open her eyes for the pain, even of the light. And so she came for the kids to pray for her. So I go, and that day we had a bunch of kids there, and a friend had come and brought her granddaughter. And so we just were having a grand old time in the back. And I gave the clipboard to one of the kids, Wesley, as a matter of fact, my grandson. And I gave it to Wes, and he looks at it, and he only knows the word headache. He doesn't know migraine, and so he just ignores it. He goes, headache? We can pray for that. And he just grabbed a group of kids and said, y'all want to go pray for a headache? And we're all just covering our mouth, like wanting to explain to him, this is a lot more than a headache. But he had faith for a headache. And so here we go. I mean, face down in the room, like, oh God, you're doing something. This is significant. They have faith for a headache. So here goes these 4 kids. It ended up being 4 kids who wanted to go in. So they all go in, and pretty soon Joe comes out, 5-year-old, and he said, we need the shofar. Well, every one of our kids loves to blow the shofar. We recognize the shofar as we use all of these wonderful tools in the kingdom, oil and prayer cloths and the shofar, the sound of heaven. And so we recognize the shofar as a work of God. And so they all love to blow the shofar. We often open our healing rooms with it, or we close a day with it, or during worship, we all pull it out and somebody will blow it, and we'll recognize that this is the sound of heaven breaking through. So he comes to get the 4-foot ram's horn. He goes back. Pretty soon, we hear these massive blasts coming from the prayer room. And of course, being kids, everybody had to turn. So we heard 4 massive blasts of the shofar. And the next thing, we see this little troop of kids come marching back into the worship room. And they're smiling, with carrying the shofar, smiling. We're like, what happened? And behind them is the lady laughing so hard she cannot talk. And so we just interviewed her. She comes in with them. What happened? And she said, well, they put that shofar up to my ear and it just blew out the migraine.
That's hysterical. Oh, that is too funny. Oh my goodness.
And I asked her maybe a year or so ago, this has been a long time ago now, but I asked her maybe a year ago, Tammy, have you ever had another migraine? And she had been, she's had a lot of health problems, and she had been plagued with migraines for years. She has never had another migraine.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Are you enjoying these stories? Well, we've got one more amazing one about a man with brain cancer. Not funny. Listen to this.
I think the one that stuck with me recently is because I got to interview these boys. They were 8 years and 9 years old at the time that they prayed for this man. And now they're 18 and 17. And they're telling the story and recounting the story from being young adults, honestly, older teenagers, remembering this time. It was the first time that they remembered that they prayed for somebody who had cancer, who came intentionally for kids to pray for them with cancer. And so I bring them the clipboard and say, this man has driven 2.5 hours. He's here for kids to pray for him, and he has inoperable cancer, brain tumor. And they're like, oh, wow. You want us to pray? I said, listen, God is the healer. We don't heal headaches. We don't heal cancer. We can't do anything. So you have as much authority over cancer as you have over headaches. You have to get the heart of God for this. If y'all want to spend some time praying, I know he'll be happy to just wait till you're ready for him. These 2 boys now say what they remembered is they went into deep intercession, is how they describe it as 18-year-olds of remembering being 8, where they said they just went into praying in their prayer language, calling forth the power of God. God, here we are. We're your little vessels. We can't heal anybody, but we're willing to pray. When they went in to pray for the man, they said, you're here for us to pray for you. We're going to do it all. You okay with us dousing you with oil? We're going to pray for you. We're going to put our hands on you. We want to put a prayer shawl around you. Is that okay with you? And the man's like, I'm here for the whole deal. Well, they did douse him pretty bad, covered him with oil, prayed over his head, put a prayer shawl over him, and spent quite a bit of time praying. He broke out in a sweat. We do remember that. That's all any of us remember. His headache went away. He left pain-free. We heard from him about 2 weeks later that he had gone back for a CAT scan, and he was completely cancer-free.
We believe that anything God has said that adults can do in the name of Jesus, kids can do it too. You'll not find one scripture anywhere that puts an age limit on signs, wonders, and miracles. And if you're interested in hooking up with Barbie Hunt and the Healing Room Kids Ministry, I've got it linked below in the description, along with some other materials that I have written on healing the sick for kids. We've got a curriculum. It's called I Can Heal the Sick in Jesus' Name. So be sure and looking for those things. And if you're interested in getting trained further, not just in healing the sick, but in children's ministry in general, then I encourage you to sign up for our School of Supernatural Children's Ministry. You will be forever changed. I did another video a few months ago with some amazing testimonies in our ministry, Kids in Ministry International. And if you enjoyed this session, you're going to love that one. Just click up here on the box and begin watching it now. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.